Hello and welcome to another Coffee with Developers. Today I'm joined by Luke Hinds, a person that I found on LinkedIn when I was looking for AI and security. Because it's a big topic and there's a lot of tension between moving fast and keeping things secure. So I thought it would be interesting to get an expert in rather than me pretending to know things. So that's why I invited Luke Hinds around. And so Luke, you're from Always Further. What is that and what is your background? How did you get into AI and security?
Good to see you, Chris, and thank you for having me on. And yes, very much so. Always Further. We are a startup, relatively young, been going since December, but I've been around a bit longer than that myself. And we are focused on AI agent security, and I can kind of cover what that consists of. But I've always been a software engineer. I've done a lot in open source over the years. I was at a company called Red Hat Linux for quite a while, and they really gave me some freedom to work on a lot of open source. And I naturally gravitated towards security. I found it quite interesting. I think the whole kind of hacker, espionage, underground type elements that there are to security. And but really writing code or software that is purpose for security more than the kind of red team sort of a kind of a security consultant, red team penetrations testing. I've always been a software engineer and worked for many different projects over the years, and I've always known open source. It's my DNA, so that tends to be my go-to approach when it comes to these things.
Why? I mean, I'm an open source advocate as well,
Mm.
but I find it mostly because whatever happens to me, my project and my work can live on. Is it kind of the same for you, or is it just like you want to reach as many people as possible? What made you go open source to start with?
Very good question, and it's one of those ones that I take for granted so much that I can quite often lose context to the answer. But I think there's many layers to open source. One, in respect of security, it's good because it's open, okay, which means more eyes on the code. So there are more people to review the code to spot mistakes that you may have made, okay, which could be security vulnerabilities. And security software, you're putting your trust into security software. It's protecting you from bad things happening. That's essentially the value of security software. And so you don't really want that to be a black box. You want to know that there's some oversight there. Is what it's claiming to be actually what it is? If we lift the bonnet on the car, we look at the engine, are there actually brakes there, or do they appear to be brakes? And so I think that open, transparent nature of open source works very well with security. The other element is that I think just open source by its nature is very collaborative. So you can find lots of smart people to work on your project. And normally you will have a shared value that you derive from that project. They want to achieve something, you want to achieve something. You all bring diversity of thought in and levels of experience. And I think that dynamic just produces really good software as well. And, some of the other things I think, if we kind of move to a business level, open source is preferred by a lot of companies nowadays because they are less concerned about being locked into a proprietary code base. So if you integrate with a proprietary code base and then dynamics change, perhaps the company goes out of business or they change direction, it's open source. So effectively someone else can come in and carry the maintenance, or you can fork, or you can, you're not left out in the cold, stranded, using a system that you are going to have a lot of trouble migrating from. So there's that element as well. And, and I think just, there is also the kind of altruistic nature of this, really. You're providing something for the love of the art. You're producing something that you want to share with other people. And as we know, that's how it all started with Linus Torvalds all those years ago. It was just like, hey, I made this thing. I'm kind of not sure where to go with it now. And then somebody was like, well, okay, yeah, I have this thing. I'd like to try and put this in. Well, yeah, great. Go for it. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, there seems to be, it was interesting when the whole AI thing started exploding lately, a few years now. It became a different bit. Like out of a sudden, companies were secretive about their code, about their algorithms, and were secretive about their systems. And at the same time, then the success stories, like the big, huge ones, were open source or openly available things. But I found that we lost a bit of the, like, as you said, the control mechanism of it. Open source to me was always like, I have to write really good code because lots of people look at it. And I have to write secure code because people attack it, but people will immediately tell me that it has a problem in it. But then I see with like, I mean, OpenClaw, all these other things, like there seems to be like a penchant right now for people to build systems that are very laissez-faire. They basically allow you to do whatever and make people not realize that they're actually making their own machine available to outside penetration just for convenience. Is this something that you found as well, that we're moving too fast in the AI space without thinking about what we're actually doing?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you encapsulated it well there. There is a gold rush at the moment, okay, and everything is accelerated. It's 10x. You know, people can produce software so much quicker at a very, very large volume. And there is a kind of a, like I said, there's this element of it's up for grabs. It's a new paradigm that we have here. You have these projects like OpenClaw, 200,000 stars, and then, you know, kind of like a whirlwind Hollywood movie. You know, the creator is suddenly sitting there with OpenAI and they're doing a deal, and, you know, on all the big podcasts, and it's, you know, there's a lot of, it's a very hot area. It's a very hot area. Okay. And when people move loose and fast, they prioritize things differently. And security generally just comes a lot lower down the list of priorities. Okay. And I think that's because security is just, it's not very sexy. Okay. It's always, you know, I've always used this analogy of, it's like eating your greens. Okay. If you say to your kid, you should eat your cabbage. Okay. It's good for them. You know, it's going to protect their nervous system, their immunity. It's very good for them. Okay. But it's not exciting, you know. And so security always tends to drop down the list of priorities, especially when people are looking to get an advantage, move fast in a new space, you know, and kind of carve out a particular territory for themselves, become a predominant player in a particular space. And you nailed it, really. That is AI, you know, especially with the frontier labs, the models, they have this kind of race to reach AGI. And, you know, they make decisions to move loose and fast, really. And I'm not saying this is the case with the frontier labs, the big labs. You know, some of them seem to have pretty good security. But in general, yeah, we've seen, you know, security very much becomes an afterthought. But mind you, that is also nothing new. That's been the case for quite a while as well. So, but perhaps it's accelerated now.
Yeah, and I think the way to get it done and the way to actually sell security to people is to make it as easy as possible. Like to not give people the chance to shoot themselves in the foot. And this is where I'm worried about a lot of the tools that are out there right now that are very much close to the metal of the machine. Like it's like the terminal is something that I feel comfortable in after 30 years of doing it. But I see a lot of people that basically are Mac users that just click things and downloaded things from an app store, and now basically get told like, okay, go to the terminal, install this thing, and then it's your personal assistant on your machine, and just give it all permissions that it can do to be more, to be as useful for you as possible. And do you think there might be a danger of giving people too much power to get directly to the source of their machine?
Very much. And it's also combined with, this is a complete black box to them. Like you said, you're used to using a terminal. I'm an old terminal hack as well. I mean, this is second nature to us, this stuff. This is a domain which is completely foreign and alien to a lot of these people. Okay. They will not understand the fundamentals of the system that's there. I think you put it really well. They're used to clicking and installing and opening, and you know, and then there's this abstraction where there's all this complexity behind there that they don't understand. They really don't understand the consequence of what they're allowing to run on these systems. Absolutely. And this has also become very apparent with generative AI in respect of coding. So you now have people are able to produce code at a very, very fast rate, but with very little understanding of the code that is under that application. And, they have a great time until there's a bug and the AI cannot fix the bug. And, it shows over, it effectively stops there. And, but I think that is very, very true. We have a whole new group of people that are coming into this space that are in the domain of software engineers and are installing very complex systems and really having very little understanding of the nature of what they are taking responsibility for. Absolutely.
And the next step, of course, is agentic AI and like the agentic web coming up, and people just say like, okay, I don't want to write code myself anymore. Like we had the code pilots and all kind of things to help you code along, but now people just let an agent run to do the things for you. Sometimes several agents run at the same time while they're doing something else, and run roughshod through their system because they give them access to everything to make sure it can do things for you. Now, do you think that it feels to me this story comes up over and over again? We had the series and the Cortanas, and we said like, okay, computer that we know from Star Trek, do things for me, and we allow it to do whatever, and then only get the result back. We are in this space right now, but it also felt to me like there was always a rush towards it, and then it kind of fell down. Do you think like agentic AI is going to be in the same spot where people get tired of like setting up machines to do things for them?
Possibly, yeah, very much, yeah. I think where we're starting now, we're very much in an explorative phase. We are trying to figure out what is this world where we exist with these new entities called agents. What am I responsible for? What is the agent responsible for? It's quite a blurred boundary there. How do we coexist? Are these things going to be fully autonomous? And there are people that say they will completely replace all labor. Okay. And and then there's others that just will not buy that. They think they're not smart enough. There's too many problems, and like all these things, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle. Absolutely. But I think it's going to take a while, really, for us to learn how to exist with these things and to really understand the power that they have, but also where they're just not applicable. Where there are maybe more traditional approaches which are perfectly valid and viable solutions to use. I'm reminded of a forum I think I was on, or it was a Discord channel around agents, and somebody was grappling with trying to build an agent which would crawl the internet, and it would look for mentions of their project, and then it would inform them. It would kind of ping them on WhatsApp, or I can't remember now. It would somehow tell the owner, your project name has surfaced on this particular website. And they were having some problems with some of the asynchronous aspects of the system. And so they were kind of in the guts of the system trying to figure that out. And then somebody said, dude, Google News alerts. Why don't you use Google? And it's like, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, yeah. I don't need to, it's already solved. But it's like we're trying to fit an agent into everything. We're trying to sort of put these things everywhere. And there will be places where they are not as suitable, and where there are better systems that are already in place, And, and this is interesting where it comes to security, because I think a lot of people are trying to apply these lofty ideals, these sort of AI-based security solutions, okay, where, you've got more agents to sort of monitor the security and to sort of, to sort of understand natural language and interpret things into policy. And it's very sort of, very sort of forward thinking. But really the good old foundational elements are irreplaceable, and they can get you a lot of good protections in place. One of course, some of the stuff that we've been working on is very much around good old practices of locking the door when you don't need it to be open, least privilege. All of these things are things that we solved for quite a while now. But I do believe there is this sort of, I don't know, we're in this era where we are trying to put AI everywhere, and maybe it's not always the right solution. There are other solutions as well.
I love the example of that high-ranking person in Meta that deleted their whole inbox. And they did it by asking a machine to actually delete files after a certain date. And you're like,
Yes.
that's a filter in Gmail. This is like you can filter that in Outlook. You don't even need a script for that. Like it's incredible how much we give these machines just like, yeah, here go for it, and we trust you. Now you built a system that to bring that up. That has the wonderful name Nono, which kind of like is okay, the first thing that most people don't go for. But what is it and what allows it to do? Because when people talk about guardrails, people talk about security in AI, it always feels for people like, yeah, don't want to think about it first, do that later when it's been a success. But I guess what I've seen so far, it allows you to use all these cool new things at the same time, keeping it safe. So is that a good announcement of what it does? But give us a quick introduction of what the need for it was and why you did it and how it's basically solving the problem that we have.
Absolutely, yes. So the project had been some code that I had around for a while, and I'd been using this approach for malware analysis. So I used to be involved in malware research, and predominantly around package managers, so npm, node package manager. And I would quite often need to grab these things, run them, see what their payload was. And to do that, you want to do that within a kind of safe confinement. So you want some isolation. So there are ways of doing this, there's containers and virtual machines, but I wanted something very quick, And so I had this code that would create something called a sandbox. Okay. And a sandbox essentially provides an isolation layer between what the application can do and the underlying operating system, with that operating system consisting of files, drivers, network connections. So you've got this protective isolation layer. And there's different levels of isolation. You can go for very, very strict isolation, like virtual machines. And then you've got containers, which are kind of an abstraction above that. And I'd say sandbox is sort of perhaps parity to a container around what they do on the isolation level. So I had this code for a while, and I'm somebody that's for a while now, I've been quite deep into Linux systems, the kernel, and understanding the security aspects of the Linux kernel. So it has these LSM, Linux security modules, and there's SE Linux and seccomp. And so there's these very good, well-established security mechanisms that are in the kernel. And that's what this sandbox essentially utilizes. So to come back, this code was around, OpenClaw came out, hugely popular. I was in the Discord channel of the OpenClaw community, and they'd created a security channel. And they'd created it for a very good reason, because it was carnage. It was like, if you go into like a city on the weekend, imagine the accident and emergency ward on a Saturday evening, when there's just crazy, absolutely crazy. And it was people were losing data, they were being compromised, hacked, and it was just like I say, just this kind of spinning carousel of people coming in and out with problems. And so I thought I should try and do something here. And so I had this idea, and I thought I have to come up with a name. So and naming projects is always really difficult. Somebody somewhere has got the domain, somebody's already registered the GitHub repo, and I was thinking, I don't know what name to go for. And then I thought, well, what's this doing? And it's kind of saying no. And OpenClaw was a very clear example of YOLO. You only live once. So I thought, no, not YOLO, no. And that was it, really. So worked on this project, got it built over a weekend, and I put it out. And I think the one thing with Nono, it started on the premise of being incredibly easy to use, very, very simple. Okay, say exactly what you want, run a command. At the end of the command, you pass the name of the application that you wish to be confined within this sandbox, and you're good. It's all done. Okay, so a lot of the heavy lifting is done for you. I thought I can't really go into what I was doing before, talking about set comp and kernels, and I'm going to lose people. This is a group of people, like you rightly touched upon earlier. They are new to these foundational parts of computing that me and you have worked with for years. They don't really understand operating systems. They don't really understand. Some people will. So of course, there's different levels, but a lot of people are quite new to this domain. So I thought I have to keep it very simple. And there's a problem at hand. People are being compromised. So let's start there. I think the good thing was that allowed a really good framework for me to purpose this as being a simple tool. And that's what made it really resonate. And it got popular very quickly. So GitHub have they call it trending. They have this page trending. And somebody said, "Oh, look, you're trending." And I went and had a look, and I was like, gosh, I think it's like second place on the kind of trending. And then suddenly all these stars started coming in, people creating issues. And I thought, right, okay, this is lifting off. There's something here. This is resonating with people. It's being of value to people. Let's pursue this. Let's see where this goes. And so we started to introduce more good, wholesome security practices into or we should say features into Nono. So it was, you had the sandboxing, which essentially means that an agent does not have this unfettered access to everything. You start off with a very limited set of, you only need access to these particular files. You have no business going anywhere else. So that's what Nono provides. And when an agent tries to access one of these files or perform an operation which it's not allowed to perform, we actually use I'm going to use this word of the kernel again. So the denial happens very, very low in the system. It's not within the code of the actual application itself. It's using these very low level, robust, sort of structurally impossible protections that are in place that you get as part of the operating system. Because if you're doing this in code, which a lot of people do, they'll try to write sandboxing as part of the application itself. So if it's OpenClaw, they have sandboxing, but they use the code that is used to develop the application. It's kind of one of the same. Vulnerabilities allow you to bypass these sandboxes quite easily. Whereas a kernel sandbox, you cannot bypass that unless there's a vulnerability in Apple's code or in the main Linux kernel. And those folks are very good with security. It's rare that happens. And when it does, it gets patched very quickly. So yeah, that is it essentially. We started off as providing this. Everything is denied. You only get what you need. And then if you need more, okay, we can talk about it. You can provide a flag where you can say, I would like the agent to have access to this folder, and then they get access to that folder. And so it started off with that very, very simple foundation, but very solid. And there's no compromise. If it's not allowed, it's not allowed. And as you touched upon earlier, agents, they love to free roam. They're very creative. They will, they'll explore and they'll go areas where they shouldn't go, and so this is really bringing in good constraints.
Cool. Well, can you show us?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do some demos. This is just a simple CLI, as we say, a command line interface. Okay, so when you install Nono, it is as simple as brew install, because I have a Mac here, but this is also available on the various Linux distributions. And so you install, and then you are up and running. And Nono will work with anything that is a process. Okay, and a process is running software. So when you start a piece of software, it's in a state of running, and then eventually that life cycle will come to an end, and it's finished. It's shut down. It's stopped. And agents run as processes. Everything runs as process. So we could start really simple before we even run an agent. We could say, I have a simple one here, so you can see what we are doing. Let me actually make this even simpler. So I'm saying no run. You're allowed access to an allowed folder. And then because you have access to that folder, I want you to list the contents of that folder. So ls is a command that lists the contents of a directory. So if I run that, now, first of all, it's going to say, right, I'm going to need access to the current directory that I'm in. So I'm an application. They require that to function. So we make the user aware you're going to share this folder. So the user may then think, well, actually, I don't want to do that because I've got my private information in there. I've got my business spreadsheets, the accounts. I have some information in there that I don't wish to share. So we're making it so that people can't easily shoot themselves in the foot. So you have to grant, okay? So I would say yes. And then you can see this is allowed to go through. And you can see there's a little file here, which is the contents of my allowed folder. Now, what you could do is we could go back to that first command. And then here you can see we've actually saying allow the current working directory. So then there is no yes, no. Okay, you're sort of nominating that you allow access to the current working directory. Now we could do one where we have forbidden. Okay, so we're now saying you're allowed access to allowed, and I want you to list the contents of forbidden. So if we run that, we grant access, and then of course you can see things have kind of gone red. There's been some sort of denial that has happened here. And if we look at this, you can see that this operation is not permitted. This may be due to a sandbox restriction. And we have not granted access to that folder. So we could, of course, bring up our command again. And we could change allow to forbidden. And then we can see this, of course, goes through. So that's kind of a very simple foundation of how Nono works. Some other interesting examples we could do is, let me just, I'm just looking back through my command line history. So
like we always do.
Yeah, exactly. So we got another one here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to allow access to the current working directory. And then we've got this is a secret. Okay. So if I try to run this, you can see it is denied. Okay. And then I could say, actually, I think I made a mistake with the, okay, right. Okay. I'm being rather silly here. So we're going to use the cat command. And for people that don't know Unix, cat essentially just shows you the contents of a file. It's as simple as that. So if I run this, okay, you can again see I'm being denied. I've got this illegal option here. I'm just trying to figure out, right, okay. Typical demo. I'm being very silly here. Okay, let's try again. So you can see, yeah, there is a restriction. And then what we should be able to do is find out why. So we would ask Nono, well, why? And then it tells us it's denied because it contains cryptographic properties. It's a key, essentially. So you can see Nono run, Nono why. We have a Nono learn. So we've got these commands to make it very easy for people to understand. I've been blocked, but what do I need to do? We try to lead the user. Now, if we bring this a little bit more towards agents, what we can do is we have, of course, Claude Code. And I'm just going to adjust this slightly. So you can see we have a profile. So we're doing the similar thing again. Nono run, we're allowing the current directory, and we're using a profile. And a profile is a set of everything that a particular application needs around grants. What files does it need to access? So rather than you having to figure that out, we've got that figured out for you. And then I would pass into here Claude to start Claude. And then I run that. And we're in Claude, but Claude is actually within a sandbox. Okay. And so you can see that we have these very particular directories that are granted, which Claude requires access to. Now, Claude does actually have a similar sandbox itself, but it's known to turn it off when it wants to, get certain things achieved. So now that we're in here, you know, we could do an example of, let's say, list the contents of my home folder. Now you can see Claude is trying to do that. I mean, it's giving it a go, but it's been blocked by the sandbox. And then you get a nice message there around the path is not accessible. You're in a Nono sandbox. If you want to allow access to it, then this is the command to run. So it's constantly educating the user how to make life easier and to be able to start to learn these things through doing. And we're using an example of Claude, but this could be OpenClaw, where we have a profile. Open code, it's another popular one. Or it could be some Python code. It could be an agent that you developed yourself. It could be any language. It could be any type of agent where you start the agent from the CLI and then you can contain it within Nono. There is quite a bit more. I won't go into too much, but you know, we have things such as some new features. There is now rollback, and rollback captures all of the file changes that an agent makes. So that if an agent does something incorrect, perhaps deletes code, or it makes a edit to a code which breaks a feature, and you just cannot convince the agent to fix it the right way, and you're frustrated because it worked, then you've got this sort of rollback machine. So what we can do is, you know, we have these examples here. You can see these are in different folders. So I can do Nono rollback, excuse me, show, and I'll grab one of these and I will do, let's just have a look at it without a flag. So you can see there's this, something was created like a new .text. I think this is just me doing some testing, but there is also the ability to, we can do side by side, which would get us a sort of a diff view. Again, this is a little bit of a boring file. If this was some code, you would see a typical diff, okay, and then you can roll back, you can compare snapshots, and so again, this is just another method of if an agent goes wrong, we have a way to repurpose back to a particular point in time where things were good, you know, where the situation was good. We also have the ability to protect credentials. Many people will have API keys. You may have like an OpenAI API key, which you use when you're calling the model. That can get very expensive if it's leaked. And when people run these agents have got access to these API keys. And if an agent is bad, if somebody introduces a malicious aspect, for example, there are these skill files that people are using, these secrets could be exfiltrated. That means they could be copied to a remote system, and a hacker could get hold of your key and then run up a huge bill for you. So what we do is these keys are stored in a secure location, and they are injected into the agent sandbox, but they're injected as a random string, which is absolutely useless outside of that context. So if that agent leaks that API key, it's no problem. It means nothing outside of that session. So it's a very sort of short-lived, uniquely generated, we call them phantom keys. They're not real keys. So you could post it on the internet and it wouldn't matter. Nobody could do nothing about it. So yeah, we're really just trying to introduce lots of very good security mechanisms to keep people safe, essentially. And we are under 30 days old at the moment. I'm trying to get this onto the official homebrew registry as a package, but we're not old enough yet. And so it just goes to show how quick things are moving. But we have a really good community that's building around the project, and you know, we're starting to get a lot of really good feedback from people. You know, appreciation really at the simplicity of the tool and the protections that it provides.
So in the file system security, that makes total sense. Like a lot of agents are actually executing binaries and executing things in the background. I mean, it surfs the web with like headless browsers and these kind of things. And oftentimes it does that with a lot of flags that actually are insecure as well. Is that something that Nono limits as well, or makes people aware that what their bot is doing there is probably reading their cookies and sending them somewhere else?
Yes, absolutely. Well, what we do is we create a full audit of every command that the agent runs. And this is recorded in a very secure way where the agent cannot tamper with it. Okay, so that will give you some level of visibility and transparency into what the agent has done. But as part of the sandbox, we protect areas such as you mentioned, for example, browser cookie sessions. So the cookie stores of all the browsers are actually part of the sandbox rules. So if an agent tries to dip into the Chrome session store, where it can hijack cookies, it can do a session hijack, it's actually denied there. Around the flags, we don't actually have any system to say what flags can or cannot be used, but the result of what those flags will surface, we absolutely can control the programmatic actions that are the result of those flags running. And we also have the ability to block what we call dangerous commands. Okay, so for example, one that many Unix people will know is the old RM RF route. So you essentially force delete recursively an entire folder. So commands such as RM, DD, that can be used in a destructive way, they are blocked. And so yeah, but it's an interesting question. You know, we could even go into a finer level, really, which is around particular flags. Absolutely, yeah.
It's
So what
yeah,
we could do is let's give it a try. So no run. We do allow current working directory. I really hope this doesn't work, and it shouldn't work. But if I was to do so allow run. I have to think about this because I could embarrass myself here if I get this wrong. Okay, let's just give it a go. So this is the bit where the guy deletes his home directory because he didn't think about something. Okay, there we go. Good for me. That could have gone very, very wrong then. But you can see RM is blocked because it's a dangerous command. Now I can provide an override. I may know what I'm doing. So of course there's that ability to very quickly say, I'm okay with this. I understand the consequences. It's okay.
How about limits on storage? Because I mean, with SSDs being the main thing, I can flood a machine with a loop if I wanted to. Is this something that can be caught as well? Like, I mean, you can cause a Stack Overflow by filling up a machine. And I remember I worked in browsers, so we had like local storage was unlimited at one time, so you could actually fill people's hard drive just with a loop on JavaScript. Is this something that it's flagged up as well, that resource management is part of it as well?
It actually isn't at the moment, but it's a very good idea. I really like the idea about the file space. What we've been doing is getting folks to use existing technology as well with Nono. Okay, so containers give you very good resource constraints around CPU usage, memory. They provide a lot of protections, and Nono will run quite happily in a container. Now, having said that, a lot of people run it outside of a container, and so that's actually Chris, you just came up with a great feature idea there. You should raise a GitHub issue for us. I like it. I mean, we do have lots of inbuilt protections around. Sometimes there are these what we call path traversal attacks with systems.
etc password. Yeah.
Exactly. And we have a lot of protections in place to make sure that those don't not allow somebody to circumnavigate the controls. And we do have a level of denial of service built into some aspects of the system around commands being repeatedly run. But file spaces, that's a great, you've come up with a good idea there. You should raise that on our issue tracker.
Cool. Which brings me to like the usage of Nono, and it's open source. It's do I have to pay for it? Is there a token system? Is this something that do I have to pay to protect my things with Nono, or is it just I can use it?
It is absolutely free, as in beer. It is what we call Apache 2 license, so it has an open source license. So anybody is allowed to download it, and you do not need to sign up. You can just install it and run it right away.
Cool.
Yeah.
So as somebody who obviously takes this serious, I love the idea of just using the kernel security rather than just writing, trying to actually do it on a software level, because as you said, it's playing whack-a-mole. It's basically trying to not have a vulnerability in your secure code. You just use the things that are already in the system to actually work around that problem. What can we do to actually get people more aware of just, I mean, this is not much effort. I can just use that and make sure that I'm not getting there. Whereas like most security things that I know always feel like, okay, I have to put something extra. I remember when Windows started to ask you every time you move the mouse if you really wanted to do that or not. Like people don't want that. People want that freedom to actually explore and make sure that you can actually experiment. Like, how can we make sure that people can experiment but stay secure and actually? I guess your story kind of told that. You went to the Discord channel, you saw that people were actually making horrible mistakes, and you built a system for them to use. And it's a one step in between rather than like sign up, please pay for it, do kind of extra things. Do you think there is a chance that something like open systems, open cloud, these kind of things, will think of these kind of features up front, or is it just the Wild West that you said that still seems to be a thing? Because I've seen a lot of feedback from people that build open systems right now, open agentic systems, and people say like, okay, that's insecure. What can we do about it? Can you please fix it? And the answer was always like, no, it has to grow fast and become viral. We don't want to limit people. Do you think there is a way we can make security not feel limiting, but feel like something that is just professional to do?
This is an age-old thing with security, and it's a really great point to raise. It really is. And there is always a balance to try and find. So with security, I have this old saying of you should never let perfect be the enemy of good. Okay. So if you're getting people to be a little bit more secure, it's great. Okay. If they are moving in the right direction, that's really good. Because security people, because we live in this world, we have very firm views around everything has to be 100% secure or it's just no good. And I'm going to write a blog about it. I'm going to write about it all day, complaining about all these people that don't understand security. So meet people where they are, okay, and let's just try to get moving forward, constantly starting to introduce better and better practices. Now, to how we do that, I think you hit on a really good point, which is there needs to be a balance. People want to be productive. They don't want to be limited and having the door slam in their face every time. They want to introduce some security because it makes sense. But if they're constantly rejected and pushed back and rejected, and they're going to turn it off. They're going to switch it off. You know, that happens all the time. People will just disable. How do I disable this? It's annoying me. How do I turn this off? So you really have to be very astute as to where is that balance? You know, where can I meet people where they are? Can I educate them? This is one of the things we're trying to do with Nono. You know, we're trying to make it so that when Claude is denied, we explain it's because of the sandbox. But if you do want to do that, you can do this, you know. So we treat people like adults, really, you know. You have the decision on and the autonomy to do it, but we're at least letting you know that it is a risk, you know. And I think that is just it's just constantly seeking this balance between the UX, the usability, and good protections. And we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to absolutely cover every single scenario. If we cover some of the more gruesome ones and we get people to adopt those, that's great, you know. And I think that's more of I think that's on us really in the security world. A lot of security people, they can be quite harsh towards the user. You know, I think there's a little bit of looking up from high down on these low people that don't really understand security. You know, that happens a lot. And no, you got to try and meet people where they are, work with them, you know. And I think you can really get some tangible traction then. A project that I worked on a few moons ago was around cryptographic signing of code and packages. Okay, it's the same problem. Nobody did it. We all knew that it was a very useful thing to do, but nobody did it. Why did they not do it? Because it was very difficult. Okay, so this is, I don't know if anybody's familiar, but we used to have you will know this, a tool called GPG. And GPG was a system to create cryptographic keys, which you could then use to sign artifacts or emails. And then if I got an email off Chris would use his key to sign it, and I would have Chris's public key, and I knew it was definitely Chris that signed this email, unless somebody's compromised Chris, you know. You had those guarantees, but it was very difficult to use. Very kind of secure, very sort of abstract terms, quite alien. And to do it safely, you needed to have like these things called like a YubiKey, like a USB key that you plug in, and difficult to get going. You need the right drivers. It doesn't work. You're spending all day trying to get it working, you know. And adoption was made very difficult, you know, so nobody used it because it was painful, you know. And so this was a problem that we tried to solve, this project called Sigstore. And we looked around at the time and we thought, you know, what's something similar where there's a difficult problem that it's been made easy, and because it's been made easy, it's become widely accessible and it's become widely adoptable. And we found Let's Encrypt. So you're familiar with Let's Encrypt, Chris? And I just, for the audience as well, Let's Encrypt is a system where you can get HTTPS or TLS certificates, as we call them, for free. And there's a tool that you run that makes it very, very easy. And then it automatically updates from there on. And it's free. It costs nothing. Okay. And this allows you to then have a secure credential, a protection system, so that when somebody goes to your website, you can see that padlock and it's a protected connection. Now, before Let's Encrypt, a lot of sites would run on HTTP, which is not secure. Okay. And the reason being was because it was very difficult and painful to get a certificate. You would have to go, and expensive. Yeah. You would have to go to I don't want to pick them out and single them, but you'd have to go to somebody like GoDaddy. You'd probably need like a driver's license and a credit card, and there'd be a back and forth, and, you know, and then eventually you get like a little zip file and you'd have to work out, oh gosh, where do I put this? I've got to put this into Apache, or, you know, sort of, how do I, you know, so again, you spend 12 hours trying to figure out how to do it. And it's a painful experience. And Let's Encrypt came along and they said, we're going to make it free, and you just need to run this tool and it's what happens for you. And so I thought, right, okay, well, that's the model then. Let's try to do that. So that's where SigStore was created. And we made it so that people could very simply sign software, sign container images. And that it became popular. And then slowly but surely, all of these big open source ecosystems started to adopt the technology, such as NPM, Python PyPy, Brew, which I showed earlier, uses SigStore. And GitHub use it for all of their releases that they make now. They use SigStore for cryptographic provenance, as we call it. So you are given assurance that something comes from where it claims to have come from. You can be guaranteed that it's not been given to you by a hacker. And again, it was that meeting people where they are, making it an easy experience. And people will adopt security then. They're very willing to do that, but you got to make it easy for them. You've got to meet them where they are, and I think there's a sweet spot, and you've got to try to figure out where that is. I remember somebody explaining this principle once, where any sort of product, it has two key values. How simple is it to use? And what is the benefit that is derived from using it? Okay. Now, if you look at a toothbrush, put it in your mouth, scrub it around, your teeth don't fall out. People are going to use toothbrushes. They're cheap. You put them in your mouth, your teeth don't fall out. That's pretty good. You see what I mean? And then you've got like solar panels. Okay. All right. This is difficult. It's kind of difficult you've got to get a specialist to come around, and you've got to kind of figure out, how much is it going to cost? If I get this many watts in the summer and my bills are this much, it's a bit more involved then, but it's free energy. It's a very good derived value, free energy, and security has always had this problem of both ends are pretty bad. One, you got to learn all this abstract alien terms and spend hours trying to get it to work. And then the benefit is, some point in the future, you may be happy that you've had it, but we don't know for sure, because it's essentially, you may be compromised, something bad may happen, but then we are maybe just telling you that because we want you to buy our thing. So it's very difficult for people to adopt that, because it's like, well, I have to invest a lot of time, and it might not actually even be of any use to me, and be like car insurance. You buy car insurance because you may have a crash, okay, but we have to have laws in place to get people to buy car insurance, because otherwise they'd think, well, it's probably not going to happen to me, and buying car insurance is not exactly fun. Nobody wakes up on a Monday and thinks, yay, I get to renew my car insurance today, so I think that's the key thing for security, really, is balancing speed, how much cognitive load is involved in me adopting this tool. And then if the outcome is less tangible, that's okay. Why wouldn't I do it? It's very easy. It's the old kind of toothbrush in the mouth,
Or it's like living in England and carrying a brolly. You just have one with you because you know it's going to rain. After a while, it's like a learned experience. It's not like that you think like, oh, I can't get out without a brolly, but just like, hey, it's good when I have it.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can use it, can double up as a walking stick or a weapon. It's it's easy to grab your umbrella and out the door. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for these insights. Let's say
Sure.
yes to Nono, because it feels like a very simple thing to do, and it's great to see how fast it grew in terms of like feedback mechanism. I think the learning here that a lot of people don't understand is the going to the Discord channel of the thing that seems to be insecure and like and being helpful, getting in there and saying like, okay, I built something that could help with that. What do you think? And then it grows from there, and the viralness of it and the fakeness of like how many GitHub stars do I have within a day. You can't go to the butchers and say like, I've got 5 GitHub stars, can I get a sausage? It won't happen. But it feels like the idea of meeting people where the problem is a good success story for this kind of tool that we have right now. So I'm looking forward to see where it goes, and I'm looking forward to this to come out and people comment on it as well and get more. And I should file that GitHub issue
Yeah, absolutely.
proposal,
Yeah.
and then we go from there.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Luke. This
Sure.
was incredible.
Yeah.
And any last words you have for people out there, because we're up the hour and people don't look at videos that long?
Absolutely. If you would like more information, nono.sh, nono.sh, that will put you on our landing page. From there, you can find docs, GitHub, a little bit more information. If you're curious about what we are doing at Always Further, it's alwaysfurther.ai. If anybody sort of feels like they need to lean in and get some more advice, we're available to work with people, and just like you said, I'm always curious as to how helpful we're being. So if anybody sees any areas where we could improve, then we'd love to know.
Lovely. .ai domains are a weird one as well, isn't it? That they only last for a year and then you have to pay to buy them again. That's a completely different change from the rest of the domain system that I knew.
They are, yeah. And there's not many of them around. They're as rare as hen's teeth to actually get one with the name you want. Very much, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks very much, Luke. This was Luke Hinds.
Yep.
This was Coffee with Developers for today. So hope you learned something. Hope you got some ideas. Nono.sh, give it a go. And please keep your agents more secure, because we don't need more rogue agents out there. Thanks very much.
Thank you.